afternoon, everyone. It is a pleasure to welcome everyone to the Academy Assembly in commemoration of Yom HaShoah. Today, we have an extraordinary honor, and that is to welcome Rebbetzin Chaya Small to the Academy via Zoom to be able to tell us a bit of her story. But before I ask her to share that story with all of you, there are a couple of things that I want to take care of. First of all, I want to thank the Gertz family for having endowed our Yom HaShoah programs over the years. It's very, very important for us that we continue to be able to have these types of programs for our students and for our community. And this program is in memory of Rabbi Shlomo Hirsch Kohler and Etka Kohler Skornek, who were murdered by the Nazis, Yom HaShoah, during the war. We thank Seymour and Sharon Gertz and also the estate of Margalit Bat Rav Shilom Gertz for helping us with this program every year. Today, we're going to hear a different kind of story than we've heard in previous years, because Rebbetzin Small was among a relatively small group of Jews, somewhere between 5,000 and 7,000, maybe a little more, maybe a little less. The historians disagree on the exact number, who were saved through the efforts of three righteous Gentiles, the most famous of whom is Chunyei Sugihara, who was the Japanese consul in Kovna in 1940. And in the course of 6 weeks, wrote of almost 6,000 visas for Jews that allowed them to escape Nazi Germany, Nazi Europe. And as a result of his efforts and others who Rebbetzin Small will share with us, the Jews of Europe, a small number of them, were able to first escape to Japan and then ultimately finish the war in Shanghai, China, until they came to the United States and other places beyond. When I was growing up as a student in the academy, I had teachers who had survived the war because of Shanghai. And it's always been part of my reality of knowing that the Torah that I learned can be connected specifically to that extraordinary story that Rebbetzin Small is going to share with us today. I don't want to take any more of her time except to thank her. Thank her not only for her courage, but also thank her for all of her efforts on behalf of the education of our next generation. And now, without any further ado, it is truly an honor to introduce all of you to Rebbetzin Chaya Small. Rebbetzin, they're yours.
First of all, Rabbi Matanki, as an echo, Ari, I want to thank you for inviting me to continue in the legacy of relating the Chag Ve'al Tishtach. Those were the words from Rabbi Lau when he came to the museum in Chicago and had reminded everyone that we must tell the story. I can hear myself. Can you hear me? We're having trouble with the audio.
We're hearing
I think we're having trouble with the audio.
Rebbetzin Small, it is fine. We're hearing you, no echo.
They're hearing you.
Oh, you're hearing me? Okay, make it a little louder here.
Wait, let me do this. I'm hanging up this all together. I'm just going to put the volume on here. Okay. And this might be better.
Okay.
You'll hear yourself because you're watching the same thing you're speaking.
Okay. Is this better for you?
Hello?
I don't know if they can hear me.
Rebbetzin, it's good. Rebbetzin, it's good.
Okay. This one, I had too much of an echo. So to you, Rabbi Matanki, thank you. To Rabbi Lau, thank you. To my family who have made this a mission for the entire family to share and tell the story so that we should remember and not forget. And especially now in these very difficult and trying times that we're going through. So without much ado, let's go into the PowerPoint and we will go picture by picture slowly. I would like to start out with telling you a little bit about myself. You see the picture in the front is it Chafetz Chaim. Circled in red is my father. And right next door was my grandfather's, who was the Rosh Yeshiva with the Chafetz Chaim in Raden. The reason I shared that with you is that what was taught in the home and in the table of my grandfather, with Moshe Landinsky, and the Chafetz Chaim. That was our Mishkan Katan of how our family life will continue. And the lesson that we learned there should continue for Klal Yisrael. Can we go to the next slide? I was born in Poland. My father, my mother, the first child, the first Ur-Ur-Enikel to the Moshe Landinsky, the Rabbi Rosh Yeshiva. Let's go to the next. My topic today is relevant to all kinds. Pirkei Avot. Al Shloshat Parim Ha'olam Omeid. Al HaTorah. Al HaAvoda. Al Milas Chasadim. We have Torah, we have Avoda, and I'll focus more on the Milas Chasadim. Let's go to the next. Leaving Poland, we went on a horse and buggy, open horse and buggy, in bitter, bitter cold, with bare possessions, maybe a suitcase, a blanket, no pillows. My mother tried to cross the border by herself with 3 children, while my father went to Vilna to be there because all ports were closed, and maybe in Vilna, maybe there would be a chance that we might be able to get an exit visa. After 3 times, we finally made it to Vilna. Let's go to the next one. Let's go to the next slide. In Vilna, in Lithuania, was a neutral country at that time, and this was our only place of hope. You see people standing outside the back of the gate, waiting for visas to Sugihara. It's a fluke of history. Sugihara was a diplomat, a spy for Japan and also for the Russians. And he was there, not as anything important, but we found out that he had ways of means of getting us a visa to be able to go to Curacao. And so all these people, the only open country that let us in, all were standing waiting to hope to get a visa from Uni Sugihara. What's next? These are the 3 players who had a hand in our escape and the building up of our future that we have today. All the way to the left is Sugihara. All the way to the right, another Japanese man, Ney. And the middle is Jan from the Netherlands. He was a diplomat there. Ney was in charge of the Navy and the transportation. Let's go to the next. I'll focus on Sugihara. Sugihara, the primary person, with his wife, were writing visas for access to be able to go to Curacao. He wrote them by hand, and day and night he and his wife and whoever was there to help him would be writing them. Interestingly enough, about Shigehara, at the end of the war, let me back up. Shigehara asked the emperor if he can write the visas for these refugees. 3 times he asked, 3 times he was turned down. Unusual. Here is a super officer, a statesman. Why would he go against the emperor's edict not to give the visas? In spite of that, he did give the visas. He did write over 1,000 visas. It could be 1 visa with 5 people on it. We estimate that he gave about between 5,000 and 6,000. But not only did he risk his life, but he was ostracized by the government after the war. He was put in shame. He couldn't get a job. He became a janitor. And the height that he could have reached in the government, with everything was taken away from him. For 26 years, we did not know who our savior was or how to find him, because he was so ashamed that he changed his name. And he was working in New York in the garment district, and somebody spoke in Russian. He overheard the people, and the man looked at him, and he looked familiar. And we said to him, "Are you Shigehara, the one who gave us the visas?" And there was an emotional meeting with them. And the one question the Shigehara asked was, "Did I save 1 person? If I save 1 person, then my mission was accomplished and I'll be happy." And the answer to him was, "No, Mr. Shigehara, you didn't save 1 person. Mr. Shigehara, you saved the world." And as a reward, everybody wanted to give him things. Mr. Shigehara took 1 thing and 1 thing only, a scholarship to his son to study in Jerusalem. He wanted no honors, he wanted no money, he wanted nothing. All that he knows that he did the right thing. And now my lesson to you young people today is, do the right thing. That is a man who had no reason to do anything, saved our world. Let's go to the next. Next. Jan. Jan lived in Curaçao. He was in the Netherlands. He was an ambassador in Japan. And he and Shigehara were friends. And he gave permission to come to his country. We did not need major visas to get to his country, just permission to leave Poland to get to Curaçao. Let's go to the next. And this is Ney, Japanese man, who, I'm a little bit ahead of myself, when we took the boat from Moscow to Vladivostok, he was in charge of getting the passengers on the boat. Our papers were not 100% okay. We were told by the government not to let us in. And in spite of all that, he did let us go on the boat. But let me go back to how we ended up coming and traveling from Moscow to Vladivostok. Let's go to the next. This is in Vilna, this train station. We had papers to leave, but we didn't know where we were going, which way we were going. My parents and children were separated. Everybody was running, as we would call, a balagan. The crying, the tears, holding hands of baggage, holding hands of children. It was the most painful, emotional, frightening experience for young children. A very well-respected man here in the city of Chicago said, "My mother did not let go of my hand for 1 month." And that was the trauma And till today, he is traumatized. I'm traumatized with that spirit, with the same experience. Let's go on to the next one. This was our route from Moscow to Vladivostok through the Trans-Siberian Railroad. The fear that most Jewish people had by going through the route, going to Russia, was that once we get on the train and we go into Russia, they're never, ever going to let us out of them. So we knew right then and there, if we stay in Europe, we have a better chance because the Germans were the cultivated people, the cultured people, the educated people will be safe in Europe. In Russia, we knew for sure we'll never get out. Going further, we didn't know the language. Where were we going? It was only the brave people who went ahead anyway. Going on the railroad took 3 weeks. Cramped quarters, no beds, little food, no facilities for relieving oneself. And living together in this way for 3 weeks, the only time we would get off to relieve ourselves in the bitter cold winter Siberian weather was to get off the stop every several hours, would stop, and then we would go back on the train. I remember my parents telling me, don't say a word if people ask you questions. The only word you can say on this railroad is, "Dai mir один стакан chai." Can I have a glass of tea? Everything else, zip. We did end up going to Vladivostok when they there saw our papers and let us go on. And we took this boat, next slide, please. We took the boat, next slide, to Suraga. We only had a 3-day pass to stay in Suraga. As you saw the picture before, showed the family of 5 allowed to be staying there for 3 days. And they, against the government orders, let us board the boat. Go to the next.
Thanks.
We're coming to Japan. As the boat came in, we saw different mode of clothing, and we're standing on the boat, and the Japanese people on the harbor were throwing us tangerines, a welcome to the people who came in. My mother, always being afraid, forbade us to have the tangerine and said if we will eat it, it's poison. If they didn't kill us in Europe, they'll kill us here on the waters. But coming to Japan was our haven. The beauty, the cleanliness, the welcome, the warmth, the greetings was something that we haven't had for a long, long time. Let's go to the next. Here are the young boys. Remember, most of the passengers were young yeshiva boys, anywhere from the ages of 16 to 22, by themselves, no parents, no mother, no father, aunt, sister, cousin, literally 100% alone with the clothes in the bag and a little suitcase. Next. Let's go to the next. We had, in order to get on the boat, we also had to be guaranteed money from America that we would not be a financial burden to anyone outside of our country. So this is a guarantee from my uncle, Rabbi Mordechai Londinsky, for the family, a total sum of 4,500 American dollars in 1940, which was a small fortune, to guarantee that there's money to cover our expenses. Let's go to the next. In Japan, the people welcomed us, the joy, Hayas, and all these religious organizations, and Jewish organizations, and non-religious organizations welcomed the refugees. These are refugees' children playing outside. Now remember, my story is different. We were not put into a concentration camp. We were not given numbers. We were not put into barracks with straw. We were not given meals of water and bread. Here we were treated like dignitaries because it was the scholars who came in to participate in the country. Let's go to the next. The ladies of the joint came to us with clothing for all the refugees. Next. These were a meeting with the refugees and the dignitaries of Japan to see what to do and how we can accommodate the refugees, because only we had 3 days to stay there. Let's go to the next. And then the hard part, 1941, Pearl Harbor. The Germans, who were allies with the Japanese, insisted to get rid of the Jews, to put them on a boat, to take them out on the deep sea, and to sink the boat. And this is where we get rid of all those Jews. But the Japanese did not listen to the Germans, and instead of sinking the boat, they sent us to Shanghai, which was under Japanese rule. And then there we made our home for 5 years. Next. Go next. I'll back up a little bit with this story. As you see, there are the Japanese dignitaries. There's the gentleman next to Rabbi Kalish, the Amton of the Rebbe. We see it in the yellow circle. Another miracle. Here are the Polish Jews coming to Japan. They don't speak Japanese. The Japanese don't speak Yiddish, Russian, Polish, or Hebrew. How are we going to save ourselves? How are we going to communicate? Another miracle in this whole trip of the exodus of the Jews from Europe to Japan and Shanghai, Tosuke, the Japanese person standing next to the Rebbe. He was a priest, a Buddhist priest from a very, very chashuva, distinguished family. He loved books and the Old Testament. He went into an antique bookstore, found a Talmud. Brilliant as he was, thought himself Hebrew, thought himself Talmud, and he was able to communicate with us. And when they went to the Japanese dignitaries that you see here, it was Abraham Kotsushi and the Amton of the Rebbe who pleaded for us to stay on in Japan. Let's go to the next. Many years later, when Abraham Kotsushi was 60 years old, he became a Ger Emes. Rabbi Shmulevich is right next to him. Abraham Kotsushi used to be a frequent visitor in our home in America. And when he left this world, he is buried in one of the most prominent places in Har Menuchos. Let's go to the next one. As I said, our life in Shanghai, in Japan, was a haven. We had beautiful apartments, cleanliness. We had a shul. The shul is still standing. I recently saw that. They gave us so much respect and treated us with so much dignity. When we came to Shanghai, which was under Japanese rule, it was a different story altogether. Shanghai was divided into 3 sections. To the left, you have Frenchtown, which was occupied by the French. To the right is settlement, which was under the jurisdiction and occupied by the British. And in center was Hongqiu, otherwise known as the ghetto, which was occupied by the refugees, the riffraff, the slum, the poor, the lowlife. Let's go to the next. This was the map of Hongqiu. It was approximately 1 square mile, occupied by 50,000 Chinese and maybe 3,000 refugees. Let's go to the next. 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 This was my pass from Hongqiu after Pearl Harbor. We had freedom. In Shanghai, when we came there, the Kaduri, very wealthy family, built a school for us, and that was called the Shanghai Jewish School. I also went to the Kaduri School in Frenchtown, where I got an immense education in English that got me into high school here in America at the age of 12. This was my path to be able to leave the ghetto for one day from Goya, the gentleman before, who named himself the King of the Jews. Goya was brutal and difficult, and when he was in a good mood, he would be a perfect gentleman. But most of the time, he was horrific, and that was the only black mark from the Japanese that I have experienced with him. Let's go to the next. The weather in Shanghai, very hot, very humid. Being a delta, if it rained, the water would come up. So usually we would paddle through the street with water, not clean water. It was filthy water, but this was life. Let's go to the next. 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 This was a typical house that usually an apartment at each and every floor, where people lived there in the ghetto. But when there were so many Jews, the only thing that each and every family got was one room. The one room had no refrigeration, had no stove, did have running water, some no bathrooms. I remember the street in the morning where the waste was coming to pick up. Not having bathroom, we had honey pot that we called. And every morning a cart would go by, they would pick up the human waste, and another cart would go by and pick up the dead bodies that were put on the street. As a little girl, I remember walking in the street, the stench was horrific, the dead bodies full of fleas and flies and bugs was something that was very, very hard to look at. Let's go to the next. I have this rickshaw to show you our mode of transportation. We didn't have bicycles, we didn't have cars, but human people would carry us from place to place only if you could afford to pay for it. And Rabbi Shmulevich, the Rosh Hashiva at that time, and Rabbi Leibowitz, the comment that they made to us was, we are here a people together, we are going to live together, and we're going to die together, but we're going to be together. And one of the edicts that he had put down is that you may not go on a rickshaw, because a human being was created with Tzelem Elohim. Every human being, no matter where they come from, has to be respected, and he cannot be treated like an animal. The only time I did take a rickshaw was in case of emergencies, where we had no choice. It was the Kurach Nefesh, and that was only one time. Next. Typical street after the war, still the same. Let's go to the next. Torah. We talked about kindness. We're going to talk about Torah. Amunas Hashem, Yira Shemayim, Ahabes Hashem, Achdut ben Adam Lachabero was the primary focus of our life. Here is a picture of the Rabbanim, Rabbi Naiman, my father, discussing the problem of the international time zone. Yom Kippur, do we fast one day? Do we fast 2 days? Some people fasted 1 day, some 2 days. Picture hot, humid, 90+ weather, fasting for 2 days. But it wasn't a burden. It was Ahabas Hashem. We did it. Whoever wanted to did it. Next. The famous story, this is the last 2 more pictures, that's all. This is the famous shul, was built by Silas Hadun. When his father came to him in a dream and he said, Kaduri has a big shul in Frenchtown, there's a big shul from the Sassoon in Settlement, why don't you do a memorial for me? And so Silas Hadun in the 1920s built a humongous shul, 224 seats, and anything that you want in that shul. But he built it right near the ghetto. Nobody entered and walked into that shul. When the yeshiva came, the place that they established themselves in was in that shul. There were 224 seats, and the yeshiva total, with all the other Brahmanim, were exactly 224. Miracle? I would say yes. Next. This was the shul in the ghetto where Rabbi Ashkenazi was the Rav. The shul is still standing now, and it became a museum. The Holocaust Museum is housed in the shul. Let's go to the next. Let's go to the next. 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 After our secular studies, we had a Beis Yaakov. This is my Beis Yaakov class. Let's go to the next. And this is the whole Beis Yaakov school. Let's go to the next. Next. This was our wedding. A German girl got married to a Litvischer boy. And if you look all the way in the front, the flower girl is one of the flower girls. My mother is all the way on the right, and the 3 children, myself, my brother, Rebbetzin Esther Levin, and my sister. Most of the clothes in that picture was borrowed, but life went on, and the German Jews and the European Jews were together. Yes, next one. And this was the wedding of Rabbi Ashkenazi's daughter during the war, 1941, who married the best boy in the yeshiva, Rabbi Milner. Also there, in back of the bride, is Rebbetzin Rishel Cutler, who was zocheh to be the wife of Reb Schneur Cutler, the daughter-in-law of Reb Aaron Cutler, the matriarch of Beis Medrash Geboha in Lakewood. And today, they have over 5,000 students in their school. Next. My home. I have to describe to you my home. Yes, this is where we lived, and that was our home. My father, in the center, was always surrounded by young people. Table was always set. People were always welcome. We didn't have much. We had very little, but whatever we had, we shared. When the people left, my bedroom was in the corner of the room. And for 5 years, I slept on the floor. Till today, sleeping on the floor is my comfort zone. And if I get sad, I curl into a corner in my bedroom, get out of bed, and am on the floor, and that's where I feel the most secure. Next. Next. We had a soup kitchen for those who did not have food. And you know that this is mainly for the German Jews who had the roughest. They came to the soup kitchen dressed in the finest, and many of them would put in a yarmulke to make a bracha on the heilige food. The food was kosher. Next. Another soup kitchen. Next. 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 In Shanghai, because there was so much poverty, there was a little girl that had no food. My mother took her into our home and she took care of the children. Our home was always open to everyone and everyone was welcome. Let's go to the next. Our Uma, our grandmother, she had no family, she had no food. Poverty was high. We took her into our home and she took care of my little brother Chaim, who's a Rosh Yeshiva now in Yerushalayim. Next. 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 Our passport papers. All I want to say is look at the fright and the fear of the unknown. It's a haunting to me, it's a haunting picture. Next. 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 The final picture, and I'll wrap it all up. We lived life, we lived the way life should be, in spite of the hunger, the filth, the sickness, achdus. And you see the rights of life in this particular picture. When the Americans bombed us, we knew we're living here now today, but we have to have a final resting place. So we built our shelter, which in the event might end up to be our graves. But life went on, and we lived every minute to the fullest. You see parents holding babies, women pregnant, young girls ready for marriage, you see the German girl, teenagers on top. And how vividly I remember being in the shelter, water up to the neck, little children saying Aleph Beis Gimel Dalet, other people saying the Vidui, others Shema Yisrael. That was my thing. Others repeatedly and repeatedly. Thank God, with God's help, nobody was hurt in our place. And this is the rights of life. We live every moment to the fullest, but b'yachad, with everyone together, achdus. Achdus. The German Jews, whether they had money or not, were religious or not, part of it, we incorporated them all together as one for all and all for one, together and together. And this happens to be the traits of the Jewish people. If there's a need, they all come out and band together. And to you young people who are listening to this, achdus bring Adam v'chaveiro, no matter what their background is, and this is what keeps our world together. And with that, let's hope that this plague that we have now will disappear במהרה, and we will build up a stronger community among ourselves. And thank you so much for having me.
Rebbetzin, thank you so very much for your presentation. On behalf of all of the students, all of the Academy, we truly appreciate your time, but more importantly, the message of hope and the message of how we need as a people to continue to stay together, the sense of achdut that we need, and that kept you alive, kept your family together, and will keep us together, not only with the memory of those, the Kedoshim, who were murdered during the Shoah, but also through difficult times that we may experience, such as today. Thank you very, very much once again. And ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Academy, for students who were here today, I'm sure you learned a lot. And for those who are visiting, also parents and grandparents, thank you for joining us. And one of my favorite announcements, ladies and gentlemen, please go to your 9th period classes. Continue to learn and continue to make us proud. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All the best. If you have questions, tell them they can call me anytime. And my thing is, the Shabbos table is the base Mekdesh Katan.
Rebbetzin, thank you so much.